In this movie, I'll introduce you to the new Shapes panel, which allows you to drag and drop custom shapes into your artwork anytime you like. And so I'll go up to the window menu and choose the Shapes command to bring up the third of the three new panels inside Photoshop 2020. Now notice that we're starting off with the old custom shapes that were transferred over from a previous version of Photoshop. And notice that the shapes appear outside of any folder, which is totally possible, by the way. You can drag gradients, patterns, and shapes out of folders anytime you like. All right, so I'll just go ahead and scroll down this list until I come to the folders that contain the 388 new shapes. And I'll scroll down even further until I see this guy, People. Notice that I've already scrolled it open. And also go ahead and make my panel much larger, by the way, so you can make it wider and taller as well. And that way, if I scroll back down here again, I can see all of my people. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and drag this guy right here, which for now is called Shape 77. I don't know if that's the way it's going to stay. And I'll just drag him and drop him into my image. Because my foreground color is set to purple, he comes in looking purple. And now I'll just go ahead and scale him. So notice that I have this placement frame right here, which is nothing more than a free transform boundary. If I were to move my cursor slightly outside the boundary, I could rotate this guy if I want to. I most certainly don't want to do that, however, so I'll press Ctrl-Z or Command-Z on the Mac to undo that change. And then I'll go ahead and accept this guy where he is by pressing the Enter key. That would be the Return key on the Mac. All right, now I'll go over here to the Swatches panel, which I already have open, and then I'm going to change my color to white. So notice that we're seeing these recently used swatches up here at the top of the Swatches panel. You're going to see recently used gradients at the top of the Gradients panel and recently used patterns at the top of the Patterns panel. Anyway, I'll go ahead and change this guy to white. I don't really want the panel to be that wide, and I don't know if this behavior is going to continue, but every time I change the size of the panel, then I end up scrolling back to the top. All right, now notice that I've created a new shape layer here inside the Layers panel, and I'm going to rename that layer People. All right, so now if I was to drag and drop another shape, then I would create another independent vector-based shape layer. And I say vector-based because you can scale these guys to any size you like, and they'll always remain smooth. But let's say you want to add a custom shape to this People layer. In that case, you press the Shift key and you drag and drop this woman, for example. Now, she's coming in smaller than the man. I don't know why that is. I want her to be the same height. So I'll go ahead and drag these corner handles like so. And I also want to flip her. So she's facing the guy. So I'll right click inside the image window and choose Flip Horizontal. And then I'll just go ahead and move her over a little bit like so. And you can press the Shift key as you drag in order to constrain the angle of your drag, in my case to exactly horizontal. And then I'll press the Enter key or the Return key on the Mac to accept that change. And notice, if you can make it out, here inside the Layers panel, the thumbnail for this layer is showing both the man and the woman. If I turn off the layer, you can see they both disappear. If I turn them on, they both come back. All right, now let's say you want to subtract one custom shape from another. For example, I want to grab this guy who looks like he's in despair, and I'm going to turn him into a hole in this guy's chest. In that case, you want to press the Alt key or the Option key on the Mac and drag and drop that layer like so. And now I'll make it considerably smaller, and I'm scaling with respect to the center by pressing the Alt key or the Option key as I drag, like so. And now I'll go ahead and put this guy right here, and then I'll scoot him over maybe just by pressing the arrow key a couple of times, and I'll press the Enter key or the Return key on the Mac to accept that change. Now, what I'm imagining here is these two are fuming at each other, and this guy's losing, whereas the woman is triumphant. So I'm going to press the Alt key or the Option key on the Mac and drag and drop her into this location so that she becomes another hole, and I'll make her smaller by Alt or Option dragging one of the corner handles so that I'm scaling with respect to the center of the shape. And I'll right click in the image window once again and choose Flip Horizontal and maybe scoot this guy over a little bit like so. And then I'll press the Enter key or the Return key on the Mac to accept that change. All right, we have one more option, and that is to create an intersection. And so I'm going to scroll down my list here until I see, I believe it's sea creatures is what I'm looking for. It's this guy right here, whatever it is. It's an urchin. And so if you want to create an intersection, that is, you only want the people to be visible inside this urchin shape, then you want to press the Shift and Alt keys. That's going to be Shift and Option on the Mac, and then go ahead and drag and drop this shape into place. And now I will Alt drag a corner handle to scale with respect to the center once again, and I seem to be invoking an auto scroll, which is okay. So I'll just press Control 0 or Command 0 on the Mac in order to center my zoom. Actually, I want this guy to be a little farther down like so. And then I'm going to go up here to the options bar, and let's try a different width value. Let's say something like 180 might work out pretty nicely so that we can see that we're only seeing the people inside of that urchin shape, at which point I'll press the Enter key or the Return key on the Mac a couple of times to accept that change. And by the way, if you ever want to bring back that transformation boundary, all you have to do is go up to the Edit menu and choose the Free Transform command. Also worth noting, by the way, is that each of these shapes, no matter how many subpaths it contains, is independently editable. So, for example, I could switch to my black arrow tool, which Photoshop calls the path selection tool, but it is, after all, a black arrow. And notice that the urchin is still selected, and I can drag it around as much as I like. I could also go ahead and select any of these other shapes here and drag them to different locations or nudge them using the arrow keys. And then when I finish, I could just click off the shapes, completely off of them, in order to deselect them so I'm no longer seeing the path outlines. And by the way, if you ever find yourself missing those old school custom shapes from previous versions of the software, then all you have to do is click on the flyout menu icon in the top right corner of the panel and choose Legacy Shapes and More, and that will bring back those hundreds upon hundreds of old school custom shapes, all of which are different than the new ones. And that is how you drag and drop custom shapes from the brand new Shapes panel.